If you have a 928 and you haven't yet taken your cluster out, you're going to want to learn this process because it's pretty inevitable that you'll need to do that. For one reason, the gears that drive the odometer are plastic and they fail. And secondly, the circuit board, for the earlier cars at least, are prone to failure as well. So it's relatively easy to get to it, actually. First step is to remove the horn panel or button. Now you just pull that off with a good tug. Disconnect the wire that feeds onto the back of it, and then remove that nut down inside there. I've written myself a note that it's a 27 millimeter, so we're going to do that now. And then what you need to do is crawl down on your back underneath the seat, and there's 3 screws, one over here somewhere, one right in the center, and one over here. Remove that panel, and then I'll show you the next step after that's removed. If you are like me and you don't have a 27 millimeter socket, know that a 1 1/16 inch socket will do the job just fine. Alright, so now we've got everything loose. The pod is just kind of sitting on there. We need to remove this grommet around the ignition key. I'll get that out with a screwdriver. And then lift this up enough to pull this unit out of there. Alright, now looking down from the outside of the window, here's one of the clips that holds the wires to the printed circuit board. I'm going to pull that off. Yes. There's one over there. Well, pull those off and the whole gauge cluster will come out. There we go. And then there we go. Alright, I'm going to put the thing down so I can pull this out. Alright, so now here you can see the entire gauge cluster out. In the center there, this section is for the odometer. And there's one of the clips for the plugs. Then there's the other one you can see over here. The one on the rightmost one is kind of rolled up. And I also had put in some aftermarket LED lights to light it up. But with this Lutz board, all of the lights on the back of this will become LEDs. So I'm pretty excited about that. People have different opinions, of course, on LEDs, but there it is. This product comes with lots of pretty detailed instructions. It's not exactly plug and play. As you can see, you do a little bit of basic wiring, but I read through the instructions before I got the kit actually, and it all seems pretty straightforward. You do need to have a basic wire cutter, stripper tool, and just a little bit of confidence to go where many others have gone. So there we go. We're gonna take this inside to a workbench and start tearing it apart so I can rebuild it per these instructions. Stay tuned. Okay, I think I have all of the hardware removed. I've laid it out over here, pretty much the same arrangement as it was on the board. There were 7 of these little, I think 7 of these little 7 millimeter nuts, and 2 of these little flat blade screws to remove, and of course these little pinch clips where the cables came in to power everything. And so now I think, oh yeah, so these little things here, then they just pop out. You can kind of pull them out with the circuit board, get them loose. Put that one right over there. Alright, there's also this one Phillips screw. It looks like it needs to be removed. It's holding the plate kind of underneath the printed circuit board. There we go. Now it looks like I cracked it. I hope that doesn't matter. Bummer, bummer. Alright, so the next step is to remove the entire panel that holds the gauges from the front, which had 9 Phillips screws. You can see over here I've collected them. And now we're going to line these tunnels with the metal foil tape to help illuminate the gauges better from the light. So the light gets in there and bounces around and needs to have the foil so more of it gets out to the gauge cluster to illuminate it. Okay, I've got quite a bit more accomplished since my last clip. I cut 15 or 16 of these 3-inch pieces of wire. I stripped both ends, clamped crimped the ring crimps on the ends of all of them, put 2 under or 1 under each of the posts on these 4 black things, and then 1 on top. The one on top was very fiddly to do because there was very little stud sticking out. You had to bend the ring on the crimp a bit to get it on there, and then try to turn the 7mm nut with your fingertip. Didn't enjoy that process, gotta be honest. But looks like it's ready for the new solid state circuit board, which we have here. These center pieces pop out. Oh shoot! You can see the LED orange or yellow spots around there for all the warning lights, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I have tightened up these, installed these connectors. These are tightened up, so I just need to plug all of these wires in to there, and these wires into there in the right order, and then we're ready to go test. The material says that you need to plug it into the car to see if these lights light up, because they are LEDs, they're polar, and they might need to be switched to 180. My big problem is that I have these aftermarket lights that were LED lights. The lights are inside these pieces of foam, and they plugged into the original plugs. But now, with this new board, there's LEDs. I don't know if you can see inside there's little tunnels, but there's an LED surface in there. And the original design had an LED tunnel, if you will, that covered that space and then went out, flared out, and lined up with these. But I don't have that, so I'm trying to figure out what to do. I can power these directly from the harness, which I don't think I want to do that. I can get new tunnels, but somebody's going to have to either drill or Dremel them off of the backing, or I could get an all new backing, not new, get a whole black backing and tear this all apart and put it all back together again, which I don't want to do, but I can't hardly blame somebody if they don't want to Dremel these out for me from an existing backing, so that I can then figure out how to attach them to this backing. So I'm waiting to hear from a couple people that said they have what I need, but I don't know how much they're going to want, and I don't know if they're going to do the Dremeling or not. So I can't really do much more. I can plug these in, these loose wires. I mean, I guess I can test this as well in the car. So we'll see what happens. Timing is everything. Okay, so here we are with my 78 gauge cluster now fully assembled with the Lutz board. A couple comments. These loose lights will go into these ports once I put this in the car and test them to see if they're in the right polarity. These zip ties, not very fond of this, but this is how the kit is done. I could trim these off, of course. I'm just not tightening them up yet because I'm not sure what I'm doing about those aftermarket lights that I've got to deal with. There are a few leftovers. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws that weren't used. They were used on the old circuit board, printed board rather, whatever that is, foil. So I got those 4 leftover screws here. There were 2 extra O-rings. They informed of that. They had 2 extras in case you messed one up, and sure enough, I messed one of them up. So I only have 1 left. That's good. They gave me an extra LED light, which is pretty cool. Not sure where I can use that yet, but we'll see if we can find a place. And then just a little bit of wire left. So I think we're all set. I don't want to move forward this evening, I don't think, at least until I know what I'm going to get for these light guides. Just a couple parting thoughts. Overall, the kit's a bit busy, I would say. You have to cut 15 pieces from that wire, each 3 inches long. You got to strip both ends. You got to put 15 of those O-rings on, and then you've got to jam them into these little tiny ports. And I don't know if you can see them very well here, but at any rate, that's kind of fussy, not my cup of tea. And these green wires, the directions say to strip them like 4 millimeters, I think it said. These wires were stripped probably 12 or more from the provider, and I didn't think to trim them before I shoved them in there. Once you shove them in there, you've got to get a very fine pick to be able to open up the trap that holds them. So I ended up getting a piece of electrical tape and sliding it down in between the 2 wires, the 2 green wires, right down to the plug, to make sure those 2 wires don't short out together. Alright, here we are back working on the Lutz board on my 928 from 1978. You'll recall that I had installed aftermarket LED lights to the gauge pod, and that's not going to work with the board. The board wants to feed the regular lights, or anyway, lights that come on the board. So I need to remove these lights. I've already taken one off. I'll take that paper out. And this is what a normal board looks like for the most part. The 3 light guides, and they are held in by plastic rivets. So I'm going to carefully try to drill those out and remove them, and then I think I will clean that old silver paint off of them and replace that with the silver tape that the kit came with. You can see laying here. No, that's not it. Here it is. So. Okay, so this is the used gauge housing that I got from James Izzo, and right where my index finger is pointing, there was a little plastic rivet there, and one over here, and one here, and one here. I used the finest tip I could find, drill tip I could find, which was this one, to kind of hollow them out initially. And I'm not sure that was of any use, because then I came back with this tip, which was 3/32, and just took the heads off those plastic rivets, and then they popped off. So probably nobody else will ever have to do this, but in case they do, that's how you do it. Okay, I have wrapped the 3 guides with the foil tape that they provide, and I'm going to glue them in place with just a tiny spot or 2 of this JB Weld plastic bonder, roughly where the original plastic rivets were on either side. And notice that they don't quite line up with the windows. This one is off a little bit, and then the other one on the other side's off just a little bit. Not sure why that is, but they are perfectly symmetrical, all 3 of them, so it's not like they're in the wrong order. And I think it'll be fine. They do cover all of the windows, so we're going forward with it as is. Okay, so here we are back in the garage at Scoper's Garage. Here I have the totally reassembled gauge cluster with the foil taped guides, the trimmed zip ties, this extra here. So I had to wait basically overnight. I missed one of these spots here. Didn't get glued yesterday, so I had to come back this morning and put some sloppy stuff on there so it would stay in place, which it does. So we're now going to put this in the car and turn the car ignition switch on to see how many of these 4 LEDs I have hanging out actually work the way they're wired. You may recall LEDs are polar, so it depends on which way the current's going through them as to whether or not they'll light. Okay, there's one plugged in. There's the other one plugged in. It'd be hard to see with the glare and everything. I'm looking down through the windshield. Let's we can set that in there gently. And come in and find the key. Right here. More than a little bit sketchy. This thing hanging all the way up. Where's my ignition switch? There we go. Let's make sure it's in neutral just in case I mess up. Okay, the statistics were perfect. 2 of them were right and 2 of them were wrong. So I think I've got them all in there now. Let's see. There we go. And although the lights don't seem to be turning on, maybe that's my adjuster down here. Nope, crap. Alright, I got to figure out why the housing lights aren't. Oh, maybe I got to do this. No, that doesn't seem bad either. Maybe this. Alright, just a quick tip here on putting everything back together. Here's the 10mm here and one over here as well. On the trim underneath the steering wheel, I would definitely recommend not using one of these battery powered wrenches. These are awesome tools, super helpful. And most everything, it tightens up. That's 10mm is just the right tightness in my experience. But these ones, you're tightening them up to plastic, and I think that might be too much. You might crack it. So I just do this finger tight. One more thing while we're under here. Where's my finger? Right here under the ignition switch is a thumb wheel for your windshield wipers. You have adjustable speed for the wipers, and then over on this side is an adjuster for the dimmer on the headlights. And so this car I had put in aftermarket LEDs in the dash, and you basically put a dimmer right in this hole here, a potentiometer, which is a dimmer that fed this dimmer, or vice versa. I don't know the order, but anyway, So I had to remove the aftermarket dimmer so that the LEDs that came in the Lutz board would have a reasonable brightness. Okay, we're going to end part 1 at this point. Come back soon for part 2, where we'll see the results of the project. Thanks, like, and subscribe.